Hi everyone. Today we're going to start our next chapter, which is chapter 3, and it's going to be on logic. So we're going to focus on a few words which we call connectives, and those words are and, or, and if-then statements. We're also going to look at if and only if. When we say the word and in a sentence, that usually implies that both things need to happen in order for the event to take place. So, for instance, if I said that you can go to the beach with your friends and have ice cream for dinner, the word and indicates both events will take place. But if I change the word to or, we would interpret that connective as meaning you can go either to the beach with your friends or have ice cream for dinner, but not both. We refer to that kind of or as an exclusive or. So when it's used, one or the other of the events can take place, but not both. There's also an inclusive or. So let's say you go to a restaurant and a waiter asks, "May I interest you in a cup of soup or a sandwich?" This time the word or offers three possibilities for you. You may order a cup of soup, you may order a sandwich, or you may order both a cup of soup and a sandwich. This is known as the inclusive or. And when we refer to the word or in this chapter, we're going to assume that it's the inclusive or. If-then statements are often used to relate two ideas. If you clean your room, then you may go to the beach. Now we're going to look at statements, logical connectives, and quantifiers. A statement in logic can be judged as either true or false. When we assign a true or false value to a statement, it's known as assigning a truth value. What do you think about the following statements? Label them as true or false. Read each of the two statements and then pause the video and see if you got the correct answer. There are 100 inches in a yard. This is a false statement. There's actually 36 inches in a yard. The Empire State Building is in the state of New York. That is true. In fact, New York is known as the Empire State. The two sentences above are called simple statements because they convey one idea. When you combine two or more single ideas, you get what's called a compound statement. If you change a statement to its opposite meaning, it's called the negation. So to negate something means to make opposite. Generally, we use the word not to negate a statement. So if the statement is Professor Cole is at home, the negation would be Professor Cole is not at home. When you negate a true statement, it automatically becomes false. When you negate a false statement, it will automatically become true because they're opposites. We need to be careful when we negate statements that contain the quantifiers all, none, or some. So if I'm given the statement, all people that live in Orlando live in Florida, pause the video and negate the statement. So first of all, when I think about the statement, all people that live in Orlando live in Florida, generally that's true. There are other states that have a town named Orlando, but when most people hear the word Orlando, they think of Florida. So we're going to say that's a true statement. If you negate that statement, you should have said something like, all people that live in Orlando do not live in Florida. So by using the word not, I'm negating that true statement, and now this is a false statement. So we know that anybody that lives in Orlando lives in Florida in this case. And this statement is saying that they do not live in Florida. So this is a false statement. Do you agree with the truth value of the negation? Why or why not? And if not, how would you correct it? I agree with this statement because it's the opposite of what we started with. And anytime you negate a statement, you should get the opposite. So since I started with a true statement, my negation should be false. So yes, our statement was true, so the negation must be false. There are other ways I could have negated that statement. In the table, I summarized some of the other ways you could negate quantifiers like all, none, or some. So if you have all are in a statement, to negate it, you could say some are not. So if I had changed my original statement, all people that live in Orlando live in Florida, and negated it to some people that live in Orlando do not live in Florida, that would also be a false statement. Because anybody that lives in Orlando does live in Florida. If your statement starts with none are, you can change it to some are. If your statement starts with some are, you would change it to none are. And then, of course, some are not could be changed to all are when you negate it. Again, giving you a false or a true, depending on what you started with. Use the table and try writing the negation of each statement. So feel free to pause the video and negate these statements. All poodles are dogs. That's a true statement. So when I negate it, it should be false. If you look at the table, all are, that tells me that my negation should say some are not. So I would change this to some poodles are not dogs, which we know is false. Now if I say some insects are animals, we're going to go in reverse. So some are, I need to change my negation to none are. So now I'll say some insects are mammals. That's a false statement. I'm going to now change it to none of the insects are mammals, which is true. Insects are not mammals. So I started with a false statement, and when I negated it, now I got a true statement. Some days are not Mondays. That is true. If I negate that, I'll change it to all days are Mondays, which we know is false. No coins have the image of Abraham Lincoln. That is definitely false. We know the penny has the face of Abraham Lincoln on it. So if I negate that, it would be some coins have the image of Abraham Lincoln. Now let's look at compound statements. Compound statements consist of two or more simple statements. So we use the words and, or, if then, and if and only if, and they're known as connectives because they connect the sentence. If and only if, remember we can abbreviate that using IFF. We consider a simple statement that is negated to be a compound statement. So in logic, when we're rewriting statements, it can, as you can see, can turn into a lot of work because sentences have sometimes a lot of words. So in mathematics, what we do is we represent the statements using lowercase letters. And the letters that we usually use are P, Q, R, and S. You can use any letters you want, but those are the ones that you're going to see in this chapter used the most. So what I mean by that is instead of writing, if you commit a crime, then you will be caught. Okay, that's a compound statement because it uses if, then. We could represent that as P could be you commit a crime, and Q could represent you will be caught. So we can look at this as if P, then Q. And in mathematics, we have a way of writing that. So we would put P, and then an arrow pointing to the right, Q. And that's read if P, then Q. We have a symbol for negation. So when you negate something, we use the tilde. And that's read not, which we remember from chapter 2 because we saw that when we were looking for the complement. So my statement is Maria is a college student. If I negate that, I'm going to say Maria is not a college student. So symbolically, we would put tilde P. That means not P. And as you all know, if you negate something that's already negative, that's a double negative, that's going to give us a positive. We have our connective and, which, if you'll remember from English, is called a conjunction. And the symbol we use for it kind of looks like the and for intersection. If you'll remember from chapter 2, it looks like this, except this time it comes more to a point. It looks like an A without the bar going across. So that's an and. So in my example, we're going to let the letter P represent you will perform 5 months of community service. And Q is you will pay a $100 fine. So my statement is you will perform 5 months of community service and you will pay a $100 fine. If I was to use symbols to represent that statement, it would be P and Q. So I would use P and the arrow pointing up and Q. Let's try an example. So here, the following statement involves Tom Holland, which you all know is an English actor, and he played in Spider-Man and other films. We're going to write the following conjunction in symbolic form. So the statement says Tom Holland is an English actor and star of Spider-Man, but is not currently playing in any films. So I'm going to let P represent the first part of the sentence, and then the word but is the connective. I'm going to let the second part be Q. If I was to write that statement in symbolic form, I would say P and Q is he is currently playing in any films. So we take out the word not. And not is symbolized by using the tilde. So we would have P and not Q. So now if you read this, it would say Tom Holland is an English actor and star of Spider-Man, and then the arrow up is and, the tilde is not, and is not currently playing in any films. For or statements, we know them as disjunctions, and we take the up arrow and now point it downwards. So this is the symbol for or. And remember, we're using the inclusive or, which means one, both, or all can occur. So we're going to let P represent Cameron will take chemistry, and Q represents Cameron will take French. We're going to write the following statements in symbolic form. So my first statement says Cameron will take chemistry or Cameron will take French. So the first part of my statement is P, and then I have or, which is an upside down arrow. Cameron will take French is the other part of the statement. So that's P or Q. If you look at the next statement, Cameron will not take chemistry or Cameron will not take French. So now we have the word not. So we're going to have to negate. So we know that for the first part, Cameron will take chemistry. Remember, take out the word not. Or Cameron will take French. Now it says he will not take chemistry. So I need to put the tilde in front of the P. And he will not take French. So I need to put the tilde in front of the Q. When compound statements contain more than one connective, a comma can be used to indicate which simple statements are to be grouped together. Symbolically, simple statements on the same side of the comma are to be grouped together with parentheses. So in this example here, the statement is Pink is a singer, or Jennifer Aniston is an actress, and Orlando is in Florida. So I have a comma separating two parts of the sentence. What we use symbolically is we would put parentheses around this first part. So that would indicate that there's a comma separating that first part in the compound sentence. So symbolically, it would be P, and then or is the upside down arrow, Q, and then we have and, which is the arrow facing up, and R. So here's my symbol here. Let's look at a couple examples. So let's make P, the house is for sale, and Q is we can afford to buy the house. Pause the video and see if you can write the following symbolic statements in words. For the first one, this tells me P, and then this is the symbol for and then that's the symbol for not. So I need to write down P, which would be the house is for sale, and we cannot afford to buy the house. For the next statement, I have not, P, and now we have an or, not Q. This statement would say, the house is not for sale, or we cannot afford to buy the house. The third statement says, not, and then in parentheses, P and Q. So the tilde, remember, means not. It's taking the statement and saying, this statement is false. So we would say, it is false that the house is for sale and we can afford to buy the house. So anytime you have a tilde that comes in front of parentheses, you can replace it with the phrase, it is false, and then state what P and Q are. So it is false that the house is for sale and we can afford to buy the house. Last but not least, let's talk about if then and if and only if statements. As I mentioned earlier, for if then statements, the symbol we use is the arrow facing to the right. We read if then. So if I wrote P arrow Q, I would say if P, then Q. The statement that occurs before the arrow is called the antecedent. So P is the antecedent. The prefix ante means before. And Q is called the consequent. And that occurs after the arrow. So if you do this, then this will happen. If you steal, then you will go to jail. So going to jail is the consequence of stealing. Stealing is the antecedent. If and only if is known as a biconditional. And it's characterized with an arrow that faces to the right and left. It's read if and only if. So if you saw this, that is read P if and only if Q. And if and only if implies that you can take the statement and you can reverse it, and both statements would be true. So if I said to you, if a triangle is isosceles, then it is equilateral. That is not necessarily true. If I turn it into a biconditional, I would say a triangle is isosceles if and only if it is equilateral. That is also not true. However, if I was to reverse it and say a triangle is equilateral if and only if it is isosceles, that could be a true statement because all equilateral triangles are also isosceles triangles. So it has to be true both ways, and in my example, it was not. So if and only if has to be used with caution. So in this example, it says we're going to let P be Alex plays goalie on the lacrosse team, and Q would be the Wolverines win the Champions Cup. So if I was to write that in symbols, I would say P if and only if Q. So what's P? It's Alex plays goalie on the lacrosse team. If and only if Q, the Wolverines win the Champions Cup. So that implies also that the Wolverines win the Champions Cup if and only if Alex plays goalie on the lacrosse team. So again, it has to be true both ways. And the last statement is Q if and only if not P. So now we're going to reverse the statement and we're going to put the Wolverines win the Champions Cup first and then not P. So if Alex does not play goalie on the lacrosse team. Let's look at one final example. So in this case, we're going to use the letters S and E. So S is the shoes were purchased at Foot Locker, and E is the outfit was expensive. We're going to write the following statements in symbols. So the first statement says, if the shoes were purchased at Foot Locker, then the outfit was not expensive. You can pause the video and try writing that in symbols. So the shoes were purchased at Foot Locker is S. And it's an if-then. So I need an arrow pointing to the right. My second statement is the outfit was not expensive. E says the outfit was expensive. So I have to negate this and then put E. In the second statement, it says, if the outfit was expensive, then the shoes were not purchased at Foot Locker. So again, it's an if-then. I need to look at what comes first, which is the outfit was expensive, so that's E. It's an if-then, so I need the right arrow. And then the last thing is the shoes were not purchased at Foot Locker. So S says the shoes were purchased at Foot Locker, so I need to negate it. And then the last statement starts out with, it is false. So if you'll recall, when we see it is false, we need to put parentheses around the rest of our statement. So it is false would imply not. So I need the negation, so I need a tilde, and then parentheses. And then I have the shoes were not purchased at Foot Locker. So that is my S, and it says not, so I need to negate it. And I'm also using the words if then, so I need an arrow. And then the last part of the statement says the outfit was not expensive. E is the outfit is expensive. So again, I'm negating, and I need to put the tilde and the E. That's the end of the video for 3.1. If you have any questions, please contact me.